topic I want to delve into tonight. First topic was very, very informative. Moving on, I want to talk about specifically teen suicide. It's an epidemic throughout the country. Recently, I read about in and around Colorado Springs, 24 teens have taken their lives over the last 2 years, which is amazing to me. And right here in Long Beach, we've been affected in the last 12 months. We've lost 2 young men to suicide, and Jacqueline Shelley, sitting next to me, her son took his life last December. And recently we had 13-year-old Brendan Carr took his life, middle school student. So we've been affected here in Long Beach. And Jacqueline, let's talk about the impact of your son's loss and what you've done since then with the foundation and making a difference, and specifically reaching out to Julie and being a comforting force for her since she just lost her son. So let's talk about your story first.
Thanks again, Howie. I know it's very sweet of you to give me this forum. My name, obviously, again, is Jacqueline Shelley. My son's name was, and still is, Daniel Brilio. He passed away on December 27th, 2015. So we're coming up on an anniversary, which, of course, is always painful for, people who have losses. The firsts of everything have been difficult. My own personal process has been one of, group therapy. I have been on some very good grief websites, and they're actually interactive and they've been very helpful. And I also, am a professional social worker, but I'm a mom, who lost her son. So going through it, I was amazed at how personally helpful and how decent, we were talking about how indecent, the internet can be, but how decent and loving and supportive people have been to me on some of these online closed support groups. Extraordinarily decent, texting me back at any time of the day or night. So that was very helpful. I would say the first 3 months, I as a mom was basically pretty frozen with my grief. But I've used, the online support groups, psychotherapy, exercise, family, and my son Benjamin actually did come home after a certain amount of time. He had gone back to college right after his brother passed, simply because we didn't really know what else to do. And he decided he wanted to go be with his friends, and halfway through I went to see how he was doing. And in fact, he was half functioning, and so he was telling me he was fine and he looked good, but that his mind wasn't healed. He was basically failing. So his college was extremely wonderful. He was able to withdraw, and he maintained his scholarship, and he came home. So really for the next 6 months, my son Benjamin was home, and so it was very comforting to have my other child home, my husband, and we all did counseling, and we spent a lot of time in the warmer months on the water and walking, and getting involved with people like you. AFSP, I'm very involved with AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I was also getting involved with the schools and other young people, helping them process my son's loss. Kids would call me. I have a lot of his friends on Facebook, and they would text me to see how I was, and I think they were kind of wanting to share how they were. So, you know, and through speaking with me, I think they felt that they were communicating with Daniel, my son. And so, you know, we process like that. I had decided, you know, early on that, you know, my son had started his depression with a physical illness. I think I'd shared this before. And it sort of morphed into a depression, and then he did go through the bullying stage. When kids are vulnerable in any way, even when adults are vulnerable, you know, animals can sense this, and so can bullies. And, you know, an animal who senses a frightened person will be aggressive. But if they sense that you're not afraid, you become the dominant. So my son Daniel was also affected by bullying, which didn't make his circumstances better. He had wonderful, excellent treatment, and I think, you know, I've shared before, we went through all the different scenarios, and what I can say is, you know, my son had fantastic treatment, but there is just not enough research on brain disorders, brain illnesses, to really explain what flips a switch in a young person's mind. But we do know that it flips much quicker because the frontal lobe, the executive functions, aren't working, you know, to their full potential. You know, I always think maybe if my son would have made it to 22, he might have made it. You know, I also think because of how much love and care and treatment that he got, that maybe he would have died at 13, and we kept him alive, you know, sort of on critical care, and he was with us longer than he might have been had we not gone to extreme measures to really keep him going. And he did have periods of remission, and right before he passed, I thought he was in a very good period of remission, which is why, you know, I really decided, you know, early on to devote myself. I have always been devoted to mental health. I've worked in addiction, alcoholism for a long time, private practice. But, you know, when it comes to your own family, it's a totally different thing. And so now it's both a personal and a professional quest. So I had decided very early on to make a foundation, you know, for my son, and I wasn't sure exactly how I would use it, and we're still sort of processing it. But I do think that you know, we have a scholarship in his name, and it's sort of it's gonna be like a peacemaker scholarship. It's not gonna be we've already started it. We did one already, but it wasn't for the smartest students. It wasn't for the most popular students. It was for the student who most represented like peacemaking, the values of compassion and kindness. And so that student got $1,000 scholarship for high school, and was not the most popular or smart or athletic student, because that's my value. You know, I want those values to be perpetuated. But frankly, we're really interested in setting up this foundation to fund brain research. And I think, you know, there's another foundation called the Chrissy's Wish Foundation, which was set up about 16 years ago by a bipolar young lady's parents, and they've raised about $700,000 for this foundation and for this particular brain research institute. And I want answers. You know, we do a lot of work for ALS, for breast cancer, and I've said this before, for below the shoulder illnesses, but people who have heart illnesses often, suffer from really devastating depressions. And then, like a so called normal person gets their first taste of like a depression. They can't believe, wow, how come I don't want to get off the couch? How come, how come I'm feeling hopeless and helpless? Like an executive, who's never had a mental illness before, and then it becomes real. I was at a party last night. My babysitter from when I was a child is 63 years old and is in her third year of Alzheimer's. And in the last 3 years, she's now basically vacant. She barely remembers much. She started eating out of the buffet with a fork, and her husband had to go over and kind of. She just didn't have the memory of a plate, So I'm very dedicated to trying to help, with the mind body connection and try to get funding to figure out why my son, with all of his treatment, but like with every disease, treatment fails. Cancer, it fails. For cancer patients, it fails. So, but I don't know why. And so, that's where I'm at with that.
Something I want to say